The salt fork has yet to eclipse either the salt or fork industries. No doubt the result of deep political lobbying by Big Salt and Big Fork. Unfortunately for them, I have a lot of free time. The first salt fork, God rest, took 3 frustrating, asphyxiating weeks to make. Mass production requires new methods. Fortunately, I got some constructive feedback on the first video. You need to have a flow of water on the salt when cutting, reiterated. So I got a tile saw, which sprays water onto a diamond-coated blade, bought some salt bricks from a gentleman, and cut out some test slices. I packed those up, pieced together a CAD model approximating the first salt fork, and brought them to another gentleman who kindly let me test a water jet machine, which uses a high-pressure stream of water and sand to cut through things. The salt fork lives on. Unfortunately, this machine, the cheapest water jet you can buy, is $10,000. But I'm like a pretty big deal on the internet now, so I emailed the company that makes the machine asking them to lend me one as a sponsorship, to which they politely responded, "Who the fuck is that?" Instead, for 1/10 of the price, I bought a hobby CNC mill, which uses a spinning metal bit to cut through things, and set out to cut a pair of forks from a slice of salt. I pretty much nailed that on the first try. No. Oh. No. What the f? Oh my. In fact, I faced various challenges like the salt sliding around and dissolving during cutting, flooding my apartment, and my parents learning that I've quit my job to make forks out of salt.
Just another cheeky flood.
To avoid more floods, I decided to build a frame to neatly hold the CNC and water system. And I thought coating the salt slices in beeswax might be a good way to prevent them from dissolving during cutting. That went about as well as it sounds. But I discovered that salt dissolves more slowly in salty water, so I dissolved a bunch of salt in the CNC's water reservoir. Yes, that worked pretty well to preserve the forks during cutting, and fortunately I have a lot of salt on hand. Unfortunately, my hands aged 10 years before I realized I needed gloves. But there is something nice about proto-forks sacrificing themselves to protect their successors. To facilitate all these tests, I was running the tile saw and noticed that the saw blade was fracturing the salt slices. Not ideal since fork fragility is a big concern. But I eventually found that slicing the salt with a blade intended for cutting glass got rid of the fracturing issue. Upstairs, things weren't going quite so smoothly, but I was handling it pretty well.
Oh my gosh. Thank you.
Eventually though, I got the CNC dialed in and cut out 2 perfect forks. You may remember I honed the prongs of the first salt fork by dipping them in water by hand. The first alternative I tried was just hanging the prongs in water, but those looked pretty bad, so I tried making a dipping machine, and those looked only slightly less bad. What seemed to be missing was a side-to-side motion. So I attached a fork to my 3D printer and spent a few days trying out different dipping patterns until I had a promising-looking prong shape. I put on another culinary masterclass to confirm that I had discovered what is now the Salt Fork Inc. proprietary prong profile, with a double taper design lending it the optimal balance of durability and forkability.
Hot damn!
I scaled up the CNC fixture to hold 4 slices, and despite a few failures, and the router slowly dying a rusty death, I made 8 perfect forks, and increased the dipper's capacity to 8 forks as well. I spent 3 days printing this 8-slice fixture to cut 16 forks in one run, but I realized if I cut the bricks along a different axis, I could make double-wide 4-fork slices with 4 shared edges instead of 1, reducing the cutting time by about 1/3 and the amount of wasted salt by about 1/2. I scaled up the CNC fixture to a final 4-slice, 16-fork configuration, excited to be on the home stretch of this so far 5-month-long project. It turned out the home stretch was another 3 weeks of troubleshooting pain. the end of which I finally cut 16 forks in one run. Big Fork is literally shaking right now. I set up the CNC down on the factory floor and built a soundproof box around it so that I'm less likely to get evicted. I scaled the dipping machine to 16 forks and moved it down to join the CNC. That night I held the factory inauguration ceremony. The next day I got up bright and early and managed to make 64 quality forks in one day, and a few hundred more over the next few days. Ladies and gentlemen, mom and dad, I have successfully transitioned from software engineer to factory worker. I got some cool boxes from China, did some brief stress testing, and sent a fork to my furthest afield friend to see if it would survive shipping. The time has come for me to make you an offer of exchange, legal tender for fork. Given the scale of the operation, please bear with me on the delivery times. But before Christmas, I will deliver you a fork before Christmas, so help me God. All proceeds will go toward making more videos, at least according to my tax return, and I can finally say what I've been waiting 6 months to say. Would you like a salt fork? I'll make you one. Thanks for watching.